with no special music and no hokala to brighten our ya moment, but here we are, you know. Will you pray with me? Holy One, help us trust you to guide us toward water. Help these words be like water to a thirsty people. Amen. Let me change my camera view so I'm not looking at myself here, but y'all online, hello. It's appropriate for our Lenten wilderness theme to have our sacred reading today from the book of Exodus. Exodus tells the story of the Israelite people freeing themselves with God's help from generations of enslavement in Egypt. Fleeing the chasing Egyptians, their leader Moses parts the Red Sea, and they begin their journey through the wilderness toward the promised land. When we find them in this story, they have already been wandering for quite some time, and they are beginning to get anxious. They have encountered trial after trial, causing them to worry each time that God will not see them through. First, they camped in a place where the only available water was undrinkable. After the bitter water is turned sweet and they survive, next they run into hunger so severe that it threatens their survival and that of their livestock. They begin to wake up to manna on the ground, a mysterious substance that feeds them and nourishes them as they travel through the wilderness for the next 40 years. In today's passage, they have run into another dry patch. Even though their needs have been met in the past, they begin to doubt and fret and worry. Where will their water come from? How many times will they have to worry again? When will this ever end? Biblical scholar Terence Fretheim says in his commentary, when a goal is no longer days or weeks away, but months and years, it is easy to lose one's moorings. These wilderness stories are increasingly about a people stuck between a promise and fulfillment. Stuck between a promise and fulfillment. If there's ever a snapshot of what it feels like to wander through a metaphorical wilderness, I think that's it. You're lured forward with the promise of something. A new medical treatment, the joy of having children, finally launching into retirement. You're told that the beginning might be a little rough, but what's on the other side of that will fulfill your wildest dreams. For the medical treatment, perfect healing. For children, fulfillment, purpose. For retirement, time to relax and connect. Maybe there's another wilderness that you are traveling through to a promised land that you are seeking right now. You launch out into the wilderness, and while walking the difficult path that you've been assured travels to the promised land, you discover that the wilderness portion lasts a lot longer than anyone told you. Maybe if you're a parent or in a parenting role, you, like me, discovered with some shock that parenting is not exactly what we were promised. I mean, talk about wandering around the desert, trying to figure out which way is north, or chasing after shimmering oases. Or you find yourself in the wilderness of some medical intervention, one which you were promised would be a piece of cake, or one which you expected would fix the issue. Instead, you find yourself going to specialist after specialist, feeling abandoned and walking alone in the wilderness of an unknown future and uncertain predicament. Maybe you thought when you retired from work, you'd be able to relish and enjoy life, and instead you find yourself spinning your wheels, not quite sure what to do with your time and feeling mysteriously empty and disconnected. Or maybe you're in the midst of or have experienced a different sort of wilderness wandering. The shock of being faithful, following to the best of your ability your call or your instructions or the most expert advice with some promise or hope of what could be, that elusive better future. And instead, you end up feeling like you were tricked, like there was a bait and switch. Wilderness wandering, stuck between promise and fulfillment. The people in Exodus, in the depths of their wilderness wandering, when they face thirst a second time, are not having it. Post-COVID, I have a much greater empathy for their response. Pre-COVID, when I read this passage, I understood that experiencing thirst a second time meant the people should have been more trusting. Didn't God provide for their thirst the first time? Post-COVID, I understand that when something terrible happens a second time, even though the first time it worked out, you have used up all your resilience tokens, making it through that first time, and you just cannot go through it again. When things go south the second time, when people are thirsty the second time, these wilderness wanderers in our story were not having it. They demanded their needs be met. They expected that having followed the call, having faithfully entered the wilderness, that the promise of goodness be fulfilled. While often this story is used to demean the people's testing of God, I find their agency bracing. It's a reminder that it is human for us to have hopes and expectations about how things will turn out. It's a reminder that it's okay to get feisty and plain old pissed off when those expectations aren't met, when we feel that promises made are not promises kept. If you are wandering through the wilderness now or have been before, in what way might or did you raise your arms and wave people down and demand something better for yourself? Insist people listen to you. Refuse to accept the circumstance that you've been presented with. In their commentary on this passage, Casey Overton from Infleshed says, follow that divine source who doesn't just deliver you out of a place, but who has also prepared a promised place for you, because deliverance demands both. In response to the people's insistence, i.e., we're going to stone you if you don't figure this out, Moses says, listen, God, you got me into this mess. You got all these people to follow me. You got to help me out here. And God says, I got you. But rather than pour rain down on the people, rather than crack open a river right where they are camped, rather than having groundwater rise up and swell the ground under their feet, God tells Moses to go ahead. Moses travels on ahead to the next place in their journey. And there, in the future of where these travelers are headed next, God stands beside Moses. Verse 6 says, I will be standing there in front of you on the rock at Horeb. Moses partners with God to meet the community's need. So Moses is the one who strikes the rock with his staff. but God is standing right in front of him. It's their partnership that meets that need. And the need is met with the most improbable of ways: water gushing from stone. It makes me think again to those times of my own wandering through the wilderness, feeling bereft and abandoned with broken expectations. It seems that many of those times there has been a person walking ahead of me, walking ahead to where I needed to go next. And I wonder if in those times of wilderness wandering, there have been people who, partnering with the divine, have conspired to give me what I needed in the most unexpected of ways. As I have parented through the wilderness, other parents further along in the journey have provided blessed water to drink through a Facebook group where stories, resources, companionship was shared. In medical scares, perhaps there has been a nurse or a fellow patient, or maybe even that perfect meme somebody texted you that has arrived in your life with just the right wink or shared groan or moment of levity that was the water that you needed, gushing from improbable stone. Just like Moses and God partnered together to bring needed water in the most unexpected of ways, how might you find in your wilderness wandering, with eyes open to see it and spirit open to receive it, the nourishment and encouragement that you need, flowing from the most unexpected of places, beckoning you to take the next step needed on your wilderness wandering? May we be open to seeing, open to receiving, open to drinking our fill from those people, partnering with the divine to quench our thirst as we wander. And as we saw in the poem, may we also be the ones who, when we can see the way forward, strike the stone to release the divine flow of encouragement for others to drink from. May water pour forth and gush abundantly for you, for me, and may our thirsts be quenched. Amen.